Hello, my name's Jasper. Welcome back to Buckle Up. Do you think the Defender's gone woke? This is an INEOS Grenadier, and it might just be the car for you. But Jasper, I hear you cry, that looks a lot like an old Defender. Yes, it does, but it's better. I don't know if you can tell, but this is very much an off-road vehicle. There's a few clues as to why that might be the case. It might be the massive bumper. It might be the clamshell bonnet and the incredibly chunky looking archers. It might be this massive skid plate underneath the front bumper, or it might be this incredibly purposeful looking grille with your headlamp clusters in it. I think it might be all of those things, to be honest. You've got some large lamps up in the front and centre, and these headlamp clusters are excellent. They say Grenadier in them, which is a bit of a running theme with this vehicle. It says Grenadier on the outside of it a lot. You've got full LED headlamps with a daytime running light ring around them, and that is also your indicator. The bumper is absolutely massive. You can actually perch on it because it sticks out so much. You can also buy the Grenadier with a factory fitted winch. This vehicle undeniably has an immense amount of presence on the road, and the whole front aesthetic really does just scream off-roader at you. The off-road aesthetic very much continues along the side of the vehicle, where you'll see incredibly chunky, prominent archers, a raised air intake for your engine, and some absolutely massive BF Goodrich all-terrain TA tyres. These sit on 17-inch alloys with 6 lug nuts, so you know it means business. Your side indicator sits, in this case, on your snorkel. However, on the other side, it does just sit on the bodywork of the vehicle. And then you've got these massive door mirrors. For an off-roader, they're actually kind of small, but I do like them. They're very good for visibility, and they say Grenadier in them. Along the side of the car, you'll see this excellent utility belt, which allows you to mount accessories to the side of the vehicle, such as spare fuel cans, any extra storage boxes, etc. The Grenadier is a vehicle that doesn't do faff. It's got proper door handles. You push something in to open them. No keyless entry here. You've got to unlock it with a remote and then grab the handle properly. Also, the door sounds sturdy when you close it, which I love. I also like this little ridge along the bodywork. I think the styling on this vehicle is brilliant. And I'm also a big fan of the tinted rear windows, which contrast very nicely with this magic mushroom paint. Down at the bottom of the car, you'll see some excellent guarding for your sills and some chunky mud flaps at the front and at the back. You do also have a fuel flap on this side, which pops open. This is a diesel model, but you can get a petrol one too. Whilst at the side, it's also worth mentioning these bars for mounting things across the roof, and you've also got power outlets available on the side of the vehicle, with auxiliary switches pre-wired for you in the cabin. A final point of styling at the side is you've got exposed door hinges, which tells you this is a proper off-roader. Around the back, the story of off-roading continues because, well, look at it. You've got your spare wheel mounted on your boot, you've got a massive chunky bumper, and you've got underbody skid plate protection at the rear too. You'll also notice that you've got towing eyes built into your chassis rails. They match up with the ones at the front. And then you've got a tow bar. This will tow 3.5 tons, braked, no problem. You've got your INEOS badge here. You've got a reversing camera. And then over here, you've got your little Grenadier logo embossed into the sheet metal of the door. You do have parking sensors all the way around this vehicle. And I love these rear light clusters. Red around the outside for your brake lights and running lights. And then your indicators are the little circle in the center. You can option a storage box that will fit inside a spare wheel, but this does not have it. But you do get a ladder on the boot. The tailgate of this is a split opening affair. So on this side, I've got a small door which opens, which is dead handy if you just need to reach in and grab something in a tighter car park. And then separately, you've got this larger door, which opens all the way and has a gas strut on it. This door has got a little storage cubby in it, which is where your first aid kit is stored. And you've got releasers on the inside of both of these doors, so if somebody gets trapped inside the car, they can always get out of the boot. The boot is 1,152 litres as standard, and if you fold down your 60/40 split rear bench, it goes up to just north of 2,000 litres back here. So I think it's safe to say you've got a big old boot in this massive off-roader. The boot is pretty practical. You've got adjustable tie-down points on the boot floor, you've got 4 tie-downs around the upper level of the boot, and then you've also got a 12-volt socket in here, and behind this panel, a full 3-pin 230-volt outlet. There is no storage underneath the boot floor though, because that would be woke. Clambering up into the back of the Grenadier is relatively easy. You've got grab handles up here, but it is very much a large step up because this is a very raised vehicle. Once you're back here, it's actually pretty decent when it comes to space. So I'm 173 centimetres tall, this driver's seat is in my own driving position, and I've got loads of leg room behind myself. Headroom is also pretty decent. I could be 182 centimetres tall and I'd still be more than comfortable in the back. I have checked, and if I put this seat all the way back as well, I've still got space to wiggle my knees, so rear space is actually reasonably good, although given the size of the vehicle, it could potentially be better. The backrests of these seats are quite upright, so you can't really recline into them for longer journeys, but then again, this is more of a utility vehicle, and as a utility vehicle goes, it's pretty decent. The materials are also pretty good, so I've got leather on the seats with contrast white stitching around the edges. The foam is nice and comfortable, so in terms of distances that I've travelled in this, it's actually pretty comfortable. The headrests adjust quite nicely, and the seats are Recaro, so they are from a pretty good manufacturer. When it comes to materials elsewhere in the cabin, you've got nice soft touch on the top of the door card, so it's somewhere nice to rest your elbow. I like this piano black insert around this proper chunky off-roady style door handle, and then you've got a little cubby by the electric window switch, a speaker grille, and a rear door pocket that's very inaccessible because of how thickly bolstered the side of the seat is, but you can fit a reusable bottle of water in it. It's just a little bit difficult to reach in and remove. In terms of other creature comforts, you don't particularly have very many. There's no armrest in the centre with cup holders in it. That's just not an option. But this is a ground-up utility, no frills vehicle. So you want Isofix for your rear bench, you can have it, but it's just there, no covers. They're just fitted. You've also got a pair of rear climate control vents where you can turn off the airflow, and they are directional, but there's no option to change the temperature of the airflow. There's only one zone of climate control in this whole car. Below those vents, you've got a 230-volt 3-pin socket and a USB Type-C and USB Type-A charging port, so rear passengers can charge stuff up. There is a pretty wide transmission tunnel in the footwell, but 3 people could sit back here. It's just not going to be overly comfortable for, say, a long journey, both in terms of foot room and shoulder room. 2 people though, no problem. I'm also quite a big fan of the rubberized floor mats that this model has. They're very utilitarian, and if you get rubbish on them, you can very easily take them out, spray them down, and let them dry off. Well, the front seats of the Grenadier are very much the place to be, because this is the seat where it all happens. Comfort up here is pretty decent. There is a large footrest on the left-hand side of the footwell, but I have not struggled with its position or the angle it makes my legs sit at all this entire week. I can see if you maybe had absolutely humongous feet, it might be a little bit odd for space down here, but the footwell is going to be a little bit tight in this kind of vehicle because you've got a massive gearbox and transfer case underneath the centre console. When it comes to this interior though, it is fantastic. It's an absolute art when it comes to proper switchgear. Look, I've got climate controls that are clicky, satisfying dials. I've got a proper volume knob. All of these buttons feel so substantial, and everything is designed to be able to be used with gloves on. The steering wheel has got proper buttons on it as well. It's a nice mixture of flat and perforated leather, and it's a twin spoke design, which I really like. It also has Grenadier embossed in the leather at the bottom of it, which ties in very nicely with the rest of the Grenadier badging on this vehicle. On the left hand side of the steering wheel, I've got all of my cruise control and voice control buttons, and on the right hand side of the steering wheel, I've got my media buttons, an OK button, and my little toot button, because this has got 2 horns. One to let a cyclist know you're there, and one to let somebody know you're really there. You've got a compass built into the dashboard, and that all sits below your infotainment screen, which is a lovely widescreen affair. Below that, you've got a couple of levers and a proper manual handbrake, because after all, this is a utility vehicle designed for off-roading. This is strangely familiar to anyone who's owned or driven a BMW, and the reason is this has got a BMW engine and the 8-speed ZF transmission that BMW sell with their 3-litre straight sixes. So the hardware here is very much familiar territory, and then over on this side you've got the lever for your transfer case, which allows you to lock the centre differential and select your low and high range. Just below that you've got the controller for your infotainment screen, you've got 6 shortcut buttons to get to various different sections of the menu, and a nice rotary controller to get through bits of the menu. The rest of the cabin is very much utilitarian, but not necessarily particularly practical. You do have a nice cubby on the dashboard up there, but not really sure what you'd want to keep in that, given it could go flying if you're driving or braking quite sharply. There's a nice section down here which is perfect for a pair of sunglasses. You've got 2 cup holders in the centre which are relatively small diameters but quite deep. You can get a can of drink in there or a reusable bottle of water. Behind that you've got a nice armrest, and then this does lift up with some storage in the centre of it. You've also got a 12-volt socket and USB Type A and USB Type C port in here, so you can plug your phone in to charge, but you do have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto fitted to this infotainment system, so you don't need to plug in to connect your phone up. There are some reasonably large storage bins in the door cards. You can definitely get a reusable bottle of water in there, and that and this armrest are basically your only storage spaces in here, because the glove box is quite frankly abysmal for a vehicle of this size. I suspect it's because most of the fuses and electronics are behind that bit of the dashboard. There's no real driver's instrumentation cluster, you've just got a small section built into the dashboard which shows all of your warning lamps, your speedometer, etc. is all displayed on the right hand side of this central screen. The other thing to talk about in the Grenadier though is this panel in the ceiling, because I feel like I'm driving a fighter jet. I've got auxiliary switches galore, which are all pre-wired, and then this section here below a Grenadier logo and the excellently positioned dimensions of the vehicle is for all of my off-road functionality. So I can turn my off-road mode on and off here, my wading mode, and then I can lock my rear and front differentials if I've already locked my centre diff. I've also got buttons to turn my ESC off and enable the hill descent control. The other thing that's been fitted to this particular car is I've got the optional extra pair of little windows in the front section of the roof, and these are actually removable. So if you're doing some proper off-roading, you can lift your window out, and then INEOS give you a bag to store this in, which sits in the boot. So if you need to have better visibility, you can stand up and have a nose out of the front of the vehicle, or if you just want that open-topped driving, you can do it in this car, as long as you pay for the optional extra. Comfort is pretty good. These seats are again Recaros. They hug you nicely, the bolstering's good and comfortable. The steering column has got a good amount of adjustability for both reach and rake. And the seats in this case are all manual with no lumbar support, but they are very comfortable and I've not really felt the need for any additional adjustment past what I've got. I think though now it's probably about time we took this out for a drive. You know how I said the Grenadier doesn't faff about? Proper key as well. Firstly, let's talk powertrain. The Grenadier is powered by BMW's straight-six 3-litre diesel engine. In this case, it produces 249 horsepower at its peak and 550 newton meters of torque, both of which are pretty respectable numbers, and because this is quite large and has the aerodynamic properties of a brick, is enough to take this from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 9.9 seconds. Not overly fast, but certainly for something that's this big and this heavy, actually pretty respectable. For something that was designed from the ground up to be as good as humanly possible off-road, the Grenadier is surprisingly decent for on-road driving. Now you do have solid axles on this vehicle and you have got a recirculating ball steering setup. So what that means is that yes, in a way your steering feels a little bit vague, but actually it's just because for off-roading you really want that steering system because it helps remove snatch from the steering mechanism, and it also means you've got very fine adjustment available. On-road though, it does mean you do have to keep your hands quite busy and the steering rack is pretty slow, so you do actually have have to do quite a bit of work to keep yourself moving in a straight line. With the suspension and damping setup you've got, you have a relatively lively ride on the road. On smooth surfaces, it's actually very settled, but when the road surface is a little bit bumpy, because the suspension was designed for off-roading, it is a little bit fidgety at times. Despite how much of an absolute monster this vehicle is, I mean, it's 2.15 meters wide, including the wing mirrors, and 2.05 meters tall, this is actually very easy to place on the road, and that's because from here I can see the corners of the vehicle, and I know the back is completely flat, so where I can see that rear tyre, I know that's where the vehicle finishes. So that means that, yes, despite it being very large, it's actually quite easy to place on the road and surprisingly easy to thread through tight spaces, simply because you can make very fine adjustments in the steering with quite a lot of movement in the wheel. Something else worth mentioning whilst we're doing some on-road driving though is fuel economy. Despite this having a very good diesel engine and a very good 8-speed ZF transmission, yeah, you're not going to get good fuel economy out of it. This has been averaging about 22.2 miles to the gallon in the time I've been driving it. I've done a mixture of this kind of rural driving and a decent couple of stints on the motorway. On the motorway, I did see 24.5 miles to the gallon, but ultimately, something like this, you are not going to get good fuel economy in, so when you're getting that kind of economy out of the diesel, I'd be genuinely tempted to go for the straight 6 petrol. As something to drive on the road, for such a ground-up off-roader, this is genuinely quite a good car. It's obviously going to be compromised because it was designed to be as good as possible when it comes to off-road driving, but given the constraints put on the vehicle because of that design intent, it's actually quite good. What you really care about though when you buy this kind of vehicle is off-road driving, so let's go and do that. So this is what you're going to do if you've got a Grenadier. This is why you're here. It's the off-road driving. So I've enabled my off-road mode, I've got my transfer case in low range, and I've locked my centre diff. That's just kind of standard starting off-road. I'm ready. What I'm doing now is I'm gradually just going up a green lane, and the Grenadier is just eating it up. This section up ahead is relatively steep. I'm following another vehicle and there's no fuss at all. This is fine. I could probably do this in high range, to be honest. I've obviously got my excellent BF Goodrich all-terrain tyres. Those are keeping me gripping on this, quite frankly, rubbish gravelly surface. And then the suspension that is a little bit lively on road is doing an excellent job of just soaking up the imperfections here off-road. Now obviously it's a very rutted surface. It's never going to be overly comfortable. Look at him! Look at him! Look at him! It's obviously never going to be massively comfortable because of the surface you're on, but the Grenadier is doing an excellent job of essentially making this look incredibly easy. While we're here, some key off-road stats for you. Approach angle 36.2 degrees, breakover angle 28.2 degrees, departure angle 36.1 degrees, maximum wading depth of 800mm and 264mm of ground clearance. This is the Trialmaster trim with the optional rock sliders fitted, and obviously, depending on what you choose to go underneath your vehicle, some of those stats will change. And as well, that steering, which on-road is a little bit fidgety, off-road it makes sense. So anyone who's driven a Grenadier on a road and whinged about the steering and not driven one off-road is massively missing out, because it's off-road where the choice of a recirculating ball steering setup makes so much sense, because I've got acres of adjustment in this steering wheel just to allow me to really finely position what is a very large car with ease. It's great, and quite frankly, so is that view. This is the kind of thing you can do if you've got a Grenadier. You can go and off-road for fun, or quite often, the people who have a vehicle like this, or the people who are looking to buy a vehicle like this, the reason they're buying one is the fact that they need to regularly drive this kind of trail for work, to get home, etc. You're doing this for a good reason. So that is the INEOS Grenadier tested on and off-road. Don't know if you can tell, I think it's quite good. So if you're after a proper hardcore off-roader that still leaves a bit of control in your hands, this is probably the best thing you can buy with your money today. You will need a lot of money, but I'd recommend it. That's everything for today's video, so if you'd like to support the Buckle Up YouTube channel, you can do so in a few ways. Firstly, please remember to like, comment and subscribe if you've not done so already, and if you do subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss one of our uploads. Also, all of our social medias are linked in the video description down below. Please do go and follow us in one or all of those places. Alternatively, if you'd like to give us a little bit of money, you can buy some merchandise from our merch store. Or if you'd like to stay right here on YouTube, we do also offer channel memberships. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.